what I wanted to do in this is, see, there are different ways in which people evaluate, right? And all I'm trying to do here is everybody has a great place to start. Unfortunately, the problem that I've seen in Toastmasters is that more often than not, people get stuck to where they are and they kind of stick to templating and checklisting things and okay, is this present, is this not present? Whereas I would want to elevate that if possible and take it to the next level and see if um, as the speaker Anu mentioned, can I take you to a place which is divorcing yourself from comfort, right? So that is what I would want to definitely work on and see if it is possible today. Um, so the speech evaluation starts. So let me walk through what I'll be doing. First, I'll be talking about the various steps, as in the thought process of an evaluator and how to go about constructing an evaluation. So the speech evaluation starts way before the meeting itself. There are two parts of it. One is the evaluation for a club meeting as well as the contest has a few lesser steps, so I'll first focus on the club meeting, because if you master the art of evaluating at a club, I'm sure you'll ace it at a contest, right? So at a club level, ensure that you get not just the evaluation sheet but the entire project sheet itself, so that you understand the idea and the theory behind the project itself, because it's probably not necessary for all of us to have done the same project, right? So it would help if you get that and understand that part. And the second one is, when you are there and listening to the speech, take in everything. I don't mean just watching it or listening to it, but live, breathe, and think and flow with the speaker, right? Why I say that is, I was also initially tempted to write down things, because I used to carry. It is not very uncommon if I say that okay, opening what that person said, tick marks, and okay, this happened, that happened. Most of us do have the habit of writing notes, and I'm not taking away that habit of writing notes at that point in time. Uh, However, the focus should not be on writing notes. The focus should be on listening. Um, just try it out once, you would see the difference. More often than not, what I do is I listen to the entire speech, make short notes so that I might not forget the content at that point in time. So you can always revisit and write your points, but make short notes wherever possible, because don't take away a lot of time from watching the speaker and living with the speaker, the experience, right? And this is very important. Keep a very open mind. uh, Unfortunately, I believe, at least in India, in Toastmasters, we are forced to believe that there are certain things which we have to do in speeches, like use the stage, use vocal variety. These are somewhat necessities, right? So uh, that is where having a template used to break me down a lot, because it was contradictory. I was able to tell, okay, you should do this more, you should do that less, but why not? There is no explanation for it. So I would suggest try and carry an open mind and see what all you can get from the speech, right? uh, so this is what should be your thought process that you carry in when you listen to a speech. And after that comes the observation part of it. So once you've understood the speech, more often than not, and I've seen that with even the evaluation given by Jacob, that fantastic observations, right? And that is what I believe a lot of us have as a strong point. We have a great ability to pick out what worked for us and what did not work for us, right? And that's a very important skill. And I believe that is the first part of evaluation. And that's a very important skill to build. There are two things which will go into it. One is understanding what stood out, understanding the purpose of the speech, on the basis of which you will know, okay, if this was the given purpose of the speech, what are the things that helped the speech and what did not help the speech, right? So in your mind, automatically you will observe all these things. I've seen that to be a good skill that a lot of us have, and definitely Jacob today exhibited that. He was able to definitely bring out good observations in the speech, right? Um, One suggestion I would have for everyone is don't restrict it to just the content or the delivery. It should be going beyond that. And that is why I mentioned the purpose of the speech, and look at the title of the speech, look at how the speaker was introduced, all the way up to how it ended, how did the audience react. All these are part of observation, right? It is not just the content and delivery, right? So just keep that in mind. Any questions so far? Okay. Now you would have a lot of things when you have done this observation, right? And let me tell you what you're supposed to do. So I'll take you to the next point on analysis, and then I'll come back to this prioritize, because that is when prioritize will make sense. So analysis for any point that we mentioned, right? I would want you to try this out. Walk a mile in the speaker's shoe. What I mean by that is, um, say for example, the speaker did something really well. Then don't just put yourself in the speaker's shoe, but walk a mile. By which what I mean is think beyond just the normal requirement of an empathy, right? Think why they would have done that. Why is this point there? How did it help the speech? If you don't feel that it helped, try to think beyond that and see, okay, it would have, at least in the speaker's mind, it would have made a perfect sense. Agreed? Otherwise, uh, everybody tries to put their best out, correct? So if they had put their best out and for them they believe that that should have made it, probably there is some weight or some thought behind that. Agreed? So it is quite possible that I, as an evaluator, could not get that connection. So try to think beyond it and see, okay, what possible connections could exist? And then you're like, okay, probably this is why they might have said it, or this is why they um, uh, might have thought that this would work, right? Try to, that is where you do the 5 why analysis. Anyone familiar with the 5 why analysis? Okay, this is something that it's a root cause analysis, right? For example, uh, say someone came late to an event, right? Like today I came late to this meeting, right? Why did I come late to the meeting? Because the prior meeting, which was supposed to go till 6:30, went on till 7, right? Why did that happen? Probably the people in that meeting were not Toastmasters. They are not used to proper timelines. They talk what they want to beyond the time limit, and time flies, right? So now, so this is the thought process which is required. So if I just look at, okay, coming in late is the observation, then understanding why the speaker came in late, right? And that is the 5 why analysis you will have to do to probably understand the thought process behind something making it, or thought process behind something not making it. And this is the analysis. Agreed? You'll have to do this analysis for every single point which you are going to present. And if you were to do so much of analysis, if you have written down 20 points, it is going to be definitely difficult to analyze all the 20, right? You'll run out of time. Even if you manage to do the analysis of all the 20, if you were to present that evaluation, it would go on for 35-40 minutes, right? So in order to reduce that, it is very important to prioritize the points, right? And this is where a very important concept is Johari window. Any of you have heard of Johari window? Yes, no, maybe? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you would have heard it in another context, so let me put it in here. So there is, imagine there is an x-axis and y-axis, two axes. So this is what the speaker knows, speaker does not know. You as the audience know, you as the audience do not know. So this is the part which both the speaker and the audience would know, right? And this is what the speaker does not know, and the audience know. And this is what the speaker knows and the audience does not know. This is what both do not know. So this part, what the speaker knows and the audience do not know, there is no way you can evaluate on it, right? Those are the dark and the dirty secrets of the speaker, right? You cannot evaluate on it, right? And the part which the speaker or the audience do not know, you won't be able to comment anything on. That leaves the part which you as the audience have a privy to, you have the knowledge in. So in this, there are two parts: what speaker knows, what speaker does not know. So can you tell me where would it maximize the impact if you give your evaluation? Any comments from anyone? Where do you think it should be? What speaker knows or what speaker does not know? I think
Speaker
people are
does
on.
not know, speaker does not
Perfect.
know, and the audience know.
Perfect, right? So you need to try to think from that perspective. For example, imagine someone is nervous on stage, right? I'm glad that nowadays people stop telling that as a feedback, but telling someone that they were nervous on stage, uh, do you think the person who was speaking is not aware of it? They come to Toastmasters at time to build the courage and build that nerve. You tell them you are nervous on stage, it's like calling a black kettle back black when it already knows that it is black, right? So uh, try to avoid the most obvious one from that perspective, which the speaker themselves might be aware of. They forgot something, they would know it, right? If sometimes you might give feedback on it, but that requires deeper analysis, right? So you would take what the speaker knows as an observation, but your analysis might take it and might give a brand new insight to it. Correct? So if you are able to do that, then that makes it into the Johari window. Your analysis would make it into the Johari window, not the observation in itself. But certain observations by themselves would be so unique. So prioritize them. And then the second condition to prioritize is what would maximize the impact on the speaker, right? Imagine you are the speaker and you are given this point and you are to work on it. Think for yourself which amongst these points would improve this speech drastically. Okay, so those should be prioritized first. Okay, and the third one is very important, specifically for contests. If you are contesting and you are the evaluation contestant number 10, okay, so you go in and you tell things which probably others might have already told. Okay, say for example the evaluation contestant number 1 made a point and you reiterate the same point. Now where do you think the score would go? You are making sure that this evaluator number 1 wins the contest, right? Because they would say, oh yeah, this was what evaluator 1 said, so 2 or 3 people say it, that strengthens the observation of the first evaluator, right? So if you are the first evaluator, feel free to share the straightforward perspectives, because you won't have time as well. You might go ahead and share the straightforward perspectives, but the lower in the order you come, you will need to have a unique perspective. The more unique things you bring, the more you can score. So this is from the contest perspective. A normal evaluation, otherwise you look at it, more often than not at the end of the meeting, everybody would share feedback. Agreed? You have given speeches, everybody would come to you and share feedback. So think what are the things which would not make it in there, because that part of the wisdom they'll get from the audience anyway, right? So what is something brilliant that they'll take from you which they won't be taking from others? If you put it that way, you will maximize the impact that you can give to the speaker, correct? So look at that unique perspective, look at the things which will maximize the impact, remember the Johari window, and that will help you prioritize the points. Okay, any questions so far? I assume not. Otherwise also I'll be more than happy to take it in the end. Now comes the very important aspect of composing it, right? Now this is what we have in contest called as technique. What is a technique while evaluating? The evaluator should ensure that the speaker is completely able to absorb everything. It's an informative speech, right? In the end, evaluation in some way, I mean, it is also inspiring, but the purpose is not to inspire, the purpose is to inform, right? So that's why I would call it as an informative speech. So if you are to inform, remember this, that the olden style of speaking is tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you've told them. And that is specifically true for informative speech, right? Which means you need to clearly tell what is to come, and then tell them the point, and then tell what is being told. And that's why in the evaluation contest, summation carries 15 marks. Okay, so which means there needs to be a definite structure, because you have to quickly set the context in 3 minutes and give the evaluation as well, right? So ensure that it's very clear in the offset. Okay, these are the things that I really liked about the speech, 1, 2, 3, 4, or how many ever points you want to. I don't think it is, I have not seen the best of the evaluations have too many points, because you'll be focusing on answering the next set of questions, but you'll have your compliments, and then you'll be like, okay, these are the recommendations in my opinion, 1, 2, and then you would probably summarize it in the end, right? So now what should each of these parts consist of? When you say a compliment or a recommendation, what should it do? Okay, so if you say it's a compliment, you need to clearly say what you're complimenting, right? And it shouldn't stop there. And unfortunately, because of a lack of time and people want to put in a lot of things into the evaluation, more often than not, it stops with the what, right? The challenge with that is, if I am a speaker and I receive a what I should do with my speech, I am someone who is a bit of a rebel in that sense, right? So I would want to understand, okay, he said that, but what is the surety that what he felt is what the rest of the audience would have felt, right? It might be a unique perspective. What if I blindly take that and apply, and I lose half the audience because it was that person's perspective, right? So if I want it to be usable, the feedback should cover the remaining aspects. So what the evaluator liked, why did the evaluator like the speech, when, in what places was it used in the speech, how did it improve / impact the speech, right? So for example, in Anu ma'am's speech, the aspect I definitely liked was the fact that you used diverse in a fantastic way, right? So it was a hook that you had, and it did its purpose, right? So normally certain hooks are required for the purpose that you bait the audience and you keep them hooked for a while, and then slowly the story reveals, and people, when the twist happens, it gets them, right? And that was very well executed in the speech, and that kept me hooked for a while, right? And that is why I like that entire hook, and that's how it helped the speech, right? So if I were to put it in this way, it would definitely take time, but I believe that is the due diligence which is required to tell the same point, right? I'm not asking you to tell a different point, but tell the same point with all these reasoning. So there are two things which would happen. One, the speaker otherwise might not be able to completely understand your thought process. Now it becomes very, very clear. That's the first thing that is going to happen. So if they wish to implement it, they'll clearly know why to implement it, and they'll clearly know how to implement it, right? So the second point is, it also gives you as an evaluator credibility. It is not a checklist on the basis of which you gave the feedback. You have put in your thought process. You have put in a good amount of effort in thinking through, and that comes out in the evaluation. And I believe that is very important in building a great rapport with the speaker, right? Because you want the speaker to implement that feedback, which means you need to show that you have put in that effort. And I believe that is very critical to build a very strong evaluation. Because in my opinion, the best of the evaluation is not the evaluation which wins the contest, but gets implemented by the speaker, right? So that's the best of the evaluation one can give. And if you want to build evaluations, and definitely the one which the speaker would implement, more likely that it might win the contest as well. That is secondary, but the point is, ensure that you do build it with the audience as a speaker in mind, because the sole purpose of existence of an evaluation is to improve, uplift the speaker, right? The same way when we come into recommendation, right? So tell, what is your recommendation? Why do you think it's a recommendation that you have? How would it help the speech? And how can they work on it, right? It's very important to also say how can they work on it. So this is where I would want you to break away from stereotypes, because more often than not, unfortunately, because we are used to it, right? So I'm not trying to say that I have not done that in the past. I try to avoid it even now. That we tend to fall back to certain comfort zones, like, okay, body language. So we look at the end products, right? The observations, and we try to improve them. So always imagine this way: a speaker comes on stage to deliver a speech, right? They have a purpose, the generic purpose, the specific purpose, they have a purpose. And that purpose needs to transfer. They are trying to communicate something that needs to transfer from the speaker to the audience, right? So how do they achieve it? The modes in which they achieve. For example, you want to go from point A to point B. There are 5 different ways in which you can go. You take one of them and go. The same way, the modes of transportation in terms of communication is the body language, the vocal variety, and the content which they put in the speech, right? So these are the modes. So if you start to evaluate the modes alone, you lose out on how well they manage to go take the message and convey it to the audience, right? Always keep the focus on the purpose and see, how did this help or did it not help? Correct? So if you change the thought process that way, you would never ask them to work on these aspects, but you would rather ask them and say, okay, if this was the purpose, probably I felt that this might not help it as much, right? So now, because there is no what do you say, this should never be done on stage, this should be done on stage, there is no such I don't know if there are such rules or there are such norms which would help. I've seen speeches which break every single norm. There is one speaker who was a world champion, and he stood in the same speech behind a podium and delivered a speech. Of course, he was visually challenged, but nevertheless, if a person can deliver a speech like that, why can't we? There are speakers. So Mark Brown delivered his world championship speech without a personal story. He won the world championship. Craig Valentine in his world championship speech spoke around 1,400 and odd words. We tend to say that you speak too fast, you speak too slow. There is each to their own. Don't try to think that, okay, there is a norm. It is not blood pressure or sugar, that it should be limited between two things. The purpose is to deliver the message across. Look at how well they are able to do it. So don't think traditionally in terms of the deliveries, right? The delivery aspect. Look at whether the delivery aspect delivers or not. Because as we call it as the delivery aspect, the major purpose of it is to deliver. Okay. So try to see if that happens or not. I think that thought process, when I understood it from some great Toastmasters like Aditya Maheshwaran and Karthikeyan Srinivasan, that change in my thought process helped me a lot. And I thought that would be the most important learning that I can share as a part of this session, right? Other than that, there was one fantastic thing which Aditya Maheshwaran taught me, which is a litmus test, right? Any speech that we give, be it a contest speech, a humorous speech, any speech at all, it is very important to have a litmus test. So for a speech, the litmus test is can I use my parents so that they don't unintentionally hurt someone. The same way the litmus test for an evaluator is if I were to share this as an evaluator and I was the speaker, okay, would I be in a position to take it? Or do I feel offended? Right? It's a very important question to ask oneself. If there is a chance that you might feel offended, imagine that you're giving feedback to someone who took an offense. No point that you shared is going to be of any use to them because they're going to close themselves out. Immaterial of what get point come after that, they're going to fall into deaf ears. So that is why empathy is a very, very important aspect of evaluation. And please remember the litmus test while you're composing, right? So again, recapping the entire thing, first off, you take in everything, then you look at all the things that you have observed, you prioritize them, you do a deep analysis, and then you do a thoughtful composition. So this is the two-pack journey to provide a valuable feedback.